So many of us are living an identity that is not us, that does not belong to us, that has been formulated through just being a part of the matrix grid and all of the things that is comprised within it, right? So we come in and then we already have societal programs and indoctrinations that are already set here. Then we go into these family structures that has familial programs and cultural programs and gender programs and all of these different layers of programs that our being identifies with and takes on and carries along our journey as if it is us, but it's not us, right? But these things like are the foundation that make up us, that creates these identity structures that we are walking. So many of us, and there's no right or wrong about it, it's just a set format in which we've been given being born within the matrix grid and how things are orchestrated. So then you go through life, right? Basically not really knowing who you are. And there are many things that human beings collectively have to like undergo. No one comes in knowing fully what it takes to love themselves. It's an experience. Self-love is a journey and an experience, and it's something that you have to walk, and it's something that doesn't end, right? Even as you continue to grow and expand and grow, even in age and years, you still find new ways and how to love yourself and to encompass self-love, right? So it just keeps growing and expanding, and it's something that we come into. It's a path that we all must walk, right? And many times, in order to love yourself, you have to really truly know the full nature of who you are. And it's like a double-edged sword to it, to a degree, because many of us will go on this self-love journey and we'll try to learn who we are, but many of us are still trying to learn who we are operating through the eyes of the matrix, right? So it's like we're still being so ingrained within certain programs and indoctrinations that has been within the matrix grid, but it's like we're still trying to learn how to love ourselves. But I feel like, for me personally, through my journey, because I'm someone that is devoted to self-mastery, I'm devoted to alignment, I'm devoted to a path of source embodiment, right? Being free in totality and being in my true essence, my true nature, knowing who I am and the full array of all that I am as source intended, right? Without all of the different layers of programs and belief systems and indoctrinations and all of that. So for me, I'm learning that in order to get to that full essence of who you truly are as source intended, you have to pretty much be willing to go against the grain of everything that is comprised within the matrix grid and what you believe to be so, what you think to be so, and what you think to be true and who you think yourself to be. You have to be willing to go back to the drawing board, and you have to be willing to give up certain things. And many times you have to be willing to go through the fire in order to get to a space of recognizing all that you truly are. The different dimensional levels of what you truly are, who you truly are as well. So for me, this journey hasn't been pretty in the slightest, being devoted to this kind of path and this particular walk, and even finding myself in a situation where I am currently without a home, and I'm currently I've been in survival energy. And at first, when I was going through it, the identity structure that was me, that I thought was me, that was created within the multitude of experiences within the matrix grid, right? That identity structure, that ego self was like being resistant to the process the entire time, right? Just so upset and just like prideful, and like, for me to be going through something like this at this time in my life, at this time in the journey, with all that and sacrifice, all the work that I put in with myself and all the things that I've done, and just, that identity structure was kicking and screaming the whole way. And what I mean by that is just being resistant, just being like, not allowing me to come to full clarity and see what needed to be seen, just causing a bit of resistance and misery along the way instead of just relaxing into it. Of course, nobody wants to be in survival energy, and nobody wants to be in certain situations. But what I'm finding in my own journey and path, and speaking for myself, as somebody that has a divine calling over their life, where for those that have a divine calling, we go through things that are much more different than those the average person that maybe just came into experience something karmic or something that's, that don't have that, basically that mission, divine calling over their life, right? So for me, what I'm finding in this journey is, in order to get to these different level of expansions, especially if you're very devoted to this path in which I am, sometimes you have to be willing to go through the fire, before you can get, to whatever's better. And that's with anything in life, right? Glass is molded in the fire, but it has to go through the fire before it gets molded, into, the beauty structure that it is. And so that's just basically how it is sometimes. And sometimes we fight ourselves the whole way through, of what we're experiencing, because it's not ideal and it's not something that we want to go through, or the ego identity structure that we have doesn't want to go through it. So it creates some type of, narrative of resistance. And sometimes that can be hindering to our process. After a while, I started to adjust to it, like I said, nobody wants to be without. And I being placed in a situation where you're without, or you don't have the certain amenities to just go and do what you want to do, sometimes it was a lot, and it has been a lot. It's still a lot at times. But I had gotten to a place where I kind of like release the pressure of it all and release the anger. Like, once I saw what was going on, and I saw that this identity structure that was formulated within the matrix that I've been carrying, all of these different layers, when I saw that it was being dismantled, I recognized that that's why it's been causing so much resistance, because it's somehow the ego and the identity structure, it knows when you're coming close to a realization and it might compromise its existence. So that was one of the things. But then I saw from the experience of being thrust within this particular experience that it was very beneficial for me personally on a soul spiritual level, right? Never would have wanted to go through it, ever. Wouldn't have chosen it on my own, but I'm all about the expansion. I'm all about being free in totality, and that's just my path, right? Disillusioning myself and disillusioning others. So I walk an entirely different path. It's not going to be understood to everybody. Sometimes your path is not, but it's yours, and you have to own it. And so being in this situation, I realized it was assisting me in a sense where not only dismantling the identity and the ego structure that I was carrying, that was formulated within the matrix, it was helping me to tap into myself in such a way that I've never done before, on these different levels, these different dimensions of myself, right? My senses became more in tune. I became more in tune within myself, and just being in nature all the time. And then fasting, I would find myself fasting because I didn't have, money to eat food. And me being who I am, I still have a certain level of pride with myself, or integrity, And I just feel like, I'm not about to go and be asking people for things or begging or, or just put myself in any situation. I understood that this was a temporary situation, something that my soul was trying to show me. But at the same time, it's like I still had that level of stubborn and ego and pride going through the situation. So I was like, if I don't have nothing, I'm just going to fast, And so that's how I practice it. I just call myself fasting. And you get it can get a little bit much after a while, but for the most part I realized it was essential, right? Because it was like me regulating my system and clearing up my system and detoxifying, but at the same time being in that situation and being outdoors most of the time. It just connected me with myself in a way that I never would have quite imagined had I not gone through this particular situation, and I found it to be very fulfilling. And then I came to a space where I had met someone and they was willing to, let me stay with them for a while, and wash your clothes when you want to wash your clothes, take a shower when you want to take a shower, get yourself together type of thing. And, that was helpful, to certain degrees. It wasn't that I wasn't already taking care of myself, but it's like when you're in that situation, it's like, and you're so used to taking care of yourself a particular way, and now you're in a whole different level of survival energy. You have to navigate a certain way. And if you're not used to that, it can be uncomfortable at first. So that's what it was for me. It was uncomfortable at first, But anyway, so I stayed in this place for a couple of days. And then I started realizing, so this experience, basically what I'm trying to say, is helped me to learn to tap into these different dimensions of myself, like my true essence, like peel back the layers and dismantle the ego and the identity structure that was created. And then it's like you're learning yourself truly, through the eyes of source, through the eyes of God, like, as source, God intended for you to be, right? Intended for us to be, beyond all of that stuff that is clouding us and keeping us from who we truly are. So it's like you start to learn yourself and see yourself and encompass that. And then the more you're learning yourself, different levels of or aspects of loving yourself kind of pops up, right? Like, let's say your essence is like, you're getting to know your essence. You're becoming familiar with her, becoming familiar with him, whoever, whatever. And then let's say you start to get tested a bit as far as from what you're learning now about yourself, right? So the energy that I was in before was like major survival energy mentally. And so, just upset that I was going through the situation, how I was navigating the whole situation, and just feeling like I shouldn't have been going through it. So then you meet someone and it's like, this person is willing to assist, but then you're like getting to know yourself on a whole new level now, right? And your essence doesn't operate in survival fear energy. That's that fear energy. It doesn't operate in that way. And so you might get posed a certain situation where it's like, you might make a choice, or you want to make a choice or a decision based off of fear, survival energy, but your essence doesn't operate on that level. So now you're in a situation where it might pose it to you as like, because maybe this person's frequency rather is not cohesive with your own. It's not resonant. And if you go and stay in a space, it could possibly be hindering to your process and what you got going on, right? So are you going to make a choice to go back to living in a comfortable situation that has a certain level of certainty, or are you going to choose to stand firm and stand your ground and be in a certain situation that is unstable right now, that has no level of certainty yet? You don't know what's going to happen, but you remain centered in your essence, in your being, right? So it's like things like that. Like the more you are getting to like know these different dimensions of yourself, you get placed in particular circumstance where it's like to basically strengthen that strengthen that energy, that is innately you. And or you can weaken it by going backwards and going against what it is that you see, so it's something like that. This has been like very worthy for me, because even for myself, I've learned that I enjoy being outdoors and I prefer to be outdoors. I'd rather not be in an enclosed space for long. Like, obviously, if I want to sleep, I want to shower, something like that, that's fine. But I'd really rather not be in enclosed spaces with others' energies. Like, there are different energies that get lodged in any enclosed space, right? And for me, being outside so much and being in a state of fasting and just being in this different space within myself, it has attuned me more to, I was already tuned, but it's attuned me like way, way more, like to the energies around me, to myself, to like, my psychic abilities, and just innate spiritual attributes that we have, that we can tap into and that we can cultivate when we are choosing to like get back to the true nature of who we are, as source intended, through source's eyes, right, through God's eyes. So that's that. I just wanted to share a bit about undoing the identity structure that we've been given, and that's been formulated and created as we go about our daily lives. Like, even every day, we have like projections that are placed upon us, and sometimes we fall into the category of these projections. We have all of these belief systems and things that we think we are, right? And it's not, and none of it is us, right? But we are walking around really feeling that we know who we truly are, when it's like we don't, and that's just the truth of it. It takes courage, and it takes the effort, and it takes the honesty, just being honest with yourself, to be willing to peel back the layers and release things that not only that don't serve, but that just don't belong to you. We're carrying a lot within our fields that do not belong to us. We even carry programs from, ancestral programs and things, and we think it's cute sometimes to say, oh, well, my mother was like that, so that's just how I am, and this, that, and the third. Things that we kind of take on, we don't realize the power of it, and that we kind of like put our own foot in our mouth, or we create these stagnant energies in our life, or we create these stigmas and limitations and barriers upon ourselves. So, and get into a place where there is no limitation. There's no such thing as limitation. There's no limitations in your field. There's no barrier. There's no distortion, right? There's no distortion. There's no illusion. There's nothing that you are carrying or owning that is not of you. I just feel that it's definitely worthy for us to start being very much aware with ourselves of what we're carrying and what we're perpetuating within our field, and what are we identifying with, and what are we believing, and and just undoing these layers and really getting back to the full essence of who we truly are. Everyone deserves to see themselves truly from their core, from their essence, through God's eyes, as source intended it to be. That is the way it's supposed to be. The Matrix grid has basically set this whole strategic trap up to keep us in a space, in a state of identifying with things and layers that do not belong to us, and it's being normalized. So I made this video because I want to normalize doing the work it takes to undo all of the layers in the programs and get back to who you truly are, your essence, and see yourself truly. Everybody's journey is not going to be the same as far as what it takes for you to get there, right? Everybody has a different path to walk, but whatever it is that you need to do in order to prioritize seeing you seeing you, knowing you, right? And knowing what is not you, you know, and being willing to release that, you know, I feel that we should start prioritizing that and start making these conversations more comfortable, you know, to speak on, instead of us doubling down in energies that we are not, right? Owning energies that we are not, identifying with concepts and belief systems and programs and layers and things that we are not, right? So that's that.